Alessandro Pantoja steamrolled through Kai Asakura on Saturday at UFC 310, submitting his opponent early in the second round. This fight was not close at all. Pantoja, outstruck Kai Asakura, was the more successful fighter on the feet, landed the harder shots, and ended up submitting his opponent in the second round, demonstrating his elite grappling once again. Which comes as no surprise. When this fight came down to grappling, Pantoja just had such a significant advantage. At this point, Pantoja is just doing a victory lap around the flyweight division. He has beaten everybody, at this point, it just doesn't seem like there's going to be an end in sight to Pantoja's title reign. They brought in Kai Asakura in hopes to have new competition and just new blood for Pantoja to face in the octagon. And, he steamrolled through that new competition once again. After UFC 310, the UFC posted a graphic of, what could be next for the flyweight champion. They talked about Brendan Royval. That's someone who Pantoja has defeated twice. Royval is the number one contender, but we've seen that fight twice. Pantoja's won both fights. Do we need to see it again? The number two contender, Brendan Moreno, obviously a former champion, a great fighter. Pantoja's defeated him 3 times. Do we need to see that fight for a 4th time? Pantoja did beat Moreno for the flyweight title. That was a close fight, but do we really need to see it for a 4th time? Because Pantoja also just keeps getting better. So I don't really know if we necessarily need to see that for a 4th go of it. Kai Kara France was the 3rd option on that list. Pantoja does have a win over Kai Kara France as well, but it's not someone he has defeated multiple times. Kai Kara France just defeated Steve Ercik at UFC 305 with a knockout victory. Ercik was someone who gave Pantoja some trouble at UFC 301. However, Pantoja, like he always does, got the job done. So Kai Kara France may be probably the best fit of those options. He's a pretty good fighter himself. Kind of the angle they can do with that is that fight took place early on in Pantoja and Kara France's careers. Kara France defeated Steve Ercik with a first round knockout. That's someone who gave Pantoja plenty of trouble at UFC 301. So that's kind of the angle they can go with to sell that fight. However, they just listed 3 options of what could be next for Pantoja, and he is 6-0 against those guys with victories over all 3 of them. It just is a testament to how dominant this guy is and how great of a champion he is. And we are truly witnessing one of the greatest flyweights of all time. And, he is definitely one of the greatest champions on the UFC roster right now. And after UFC 310, Pantoja called out Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson. Demetrious Johnson is obviously one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time. He's on many Mount Rushmores of greatest UFC fighters to ever live. He has just dominated the UFC in his tenure. He had 11 straight title defenses. That is the most in UFC history. However, Demetrious Johnson left the UFC, was traded, to the one promotion for Ben Askren. We know how that trade worked out. Demetrious Johnson, however, has retired. He hasn't fought since 2023. However, Pantoja clearly wants to fight Demetrious Johnson, calling him out several times at UFC 310. And, it's understandable. Demetrious Johnson is the flyweight GOAT. Pantoja really making a strong case for himself to be in that conversation at this point. He's cleared out the entire division, and he's just lapping the division. Give him a new challenge. This is an opportunity for Pantoja to cement himself as the greatest flyweight of all time. And the thing is, if you're Demetrious Johnson, why do it? And that's what he said following on his YouTube page following being called out at UFC 310. He said, "What is in it for me? What do I have to prove?" Demetrious Johnson's 38 years old. He hasn't competed in about 2 years now. He turned down $2 million to fight. He said on his YouTube page already. The UFC's not going to offer Demetrious Johnson more than $2 million, and I just think at this point, I think that's a fight that Pantoja would win at this stage of their careers. Not that, prime Demetrious Johnson couldn't beat, prime Pantoja, but I think it's safe to say that Johnson has passed his prime. For the last 6 years, he hasn't competed against the UFC flyweights. Those are the best of the best in the world. The one promotion is just not as good as the UFC guys. Pantoja for the last 6 years has just fought much better competition. He's been much more active over the last few years as well. Johnson was kind of only fighting once a year, while Pantoja has been fighting multiple times a year for the last several years. He's actually one of the most active champions in the UFC. And also, Demetrious Johnson has been fighting at 135 pounds over the last several years. Making that weight cut to 125 again at the age of 38, that's not too appealing. So I really don't think this fight is, ever going to happen. But it would be great because, Pantoja has already just cemented himself as the next best guy. And, I think it's going to take a lot of time for him to cement himself as the number one guy. Obviously, Pantoja's goal is to cement himself as the greatest flyweight to ever fight in the UFC. And 11 title defenses compared to 3. I mean, that's going to take years and years and years for Pantoja to catch up to. He might get close, but at the age of 34, I think it's safe to say he's probably not going to get there. But definitely one of the most dominant fighters in the UFC. And it is definitely an interesting matchup if they can get Demetrious Johnson interested. However, I just don't think it's going to happen. However, that would be a dream fight. It's a fight that everyone would want to see. Pantoja has really done so much for the flyweight division over the last couple of years. He's saying how he wants to stick around at flyweight. He's been promoting the division, talking about how great this division is, how challenging this division is, and he's used that championship platform to just elevate the division. And he's talked about how he doesn't want to leave the division. There was discussions about him moving up to 135 pounds, facing the winner of Merab versus Umar. He did express, slight interest in it, but at the UFC press conference, he stated that he would really just like to stay at flyweight. And, he's really just promoting that lower weight class that has been, in jeopardy of being cut by the UFC for so many years. And, he is starting to popularize that division. It's a lot of credit to Pantoja for doing that instead of pursuing that champ status that Conor McGregor popularized, so much 10 years ago. But right now, Pantoja has really just set an example of being the guy to promote and save that flyweight division. And, that's something that Demetrious Johnson did so many years ago. And, I think at this point, I think it's safe to say that Pantoja and Demetrious Johnson are approaching equal levels of greatness. That's just how good Pantoja has been. And it's definitely going to be really interesting to see what's next for him and what the UFC can come up with for him. I think Kai Kara France is the most likely option, but I think the option that everyone would like is Demetrious Johnson versus Alexandre Pantoja.